All right, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We have a fun one we're going to talk about today. But before we get started with the show, I want you guys to just take a minute and press the subscribe button, which is either on this side or this side, and press the alert bell, which is on either this side or this side. You get to choose. I don't know if this is mirrored. My video editor, I'm sure, will tell me. But go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of the shows. Also, go check us out at macrosinc.net and get signed up for free 2 weeks of coaching. So let's just jump right into the show. And this was actually a note from a colleague that I got regarding just some of the challenges of building a business, but I really want to tie this into understanding what you actually want. So something that I've been having some discussions with lately, and this has really kind of come out of, we're kind of at a size at Macros Inc. where there's a lot of changes occurring. There's a lot of growth that's occurring. And when I say growth right now, what I'm talking about is not necessarily, growth in terms of like we're adding 1,000 clients a month or we're hiring a ton of people right now. We actually kind of just went through our last big hiring process in Q3 and Q4 of last year to prepare for this year. And right now we're kind of going through a type of growth that is maybe the more uncomfortable growth. And what it's really focused on is having the hard conversations we need to have, mentally and emotionally growing and maturing as professionals, as people, as colleagues, and doing the hard internal work that it takes to kind of get to that next level of being able to handle the work and the conversations and kind of just the growth of what it means to kind of build the next level of scale in a business. And I want to tie this into, really just understanding what you want. And I want to start with a little more on the health and fitness side, and then I'll dive into the business side. One of the things that a lot of people start their health and fitness journey is they sit down and they write down these goals that they think they should want, right? They're like, I want 6-pack abs. I want to run a marathon. I want to compete in the CrossFit games. I want to do, a bodybuilding show, a physique show, whatever it is. They set these goals based on what they think they should want, not what they actually want. And a lot of times it's because they see what other successful people have done, and they think that's what they should do because that is the measure of success. And I think it's really important that you actually understand what it is that you want and why you're doing what you're doing, right? Maybe you do want to compete in a physique show. Maybe you do want to run a marathon. Or maybe your goal is you want to feel confident, you want to be healthy, you want to be able to move your body, you want to be able to take your dogs on hikes, you want to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle. Whatever it is, really spend the time thinking about what it is that you want to accomplish, because you need to know that that's actually moving the needle for you and making your life better. You're not doing this because it's some arbitrary measure of success based on some weird industry standard. And the reason that's important is that's going to drive the decisions that you make. And the decisions that you make regarding your dieting, your exercise, your recovery, just all of those things really need to align, because what you do for one of those goals is way different than what you do for another one. And really just spending the time before you start your journey to think about that. So when I work with clients, that's one of the things that we really spend time thinking through and discussing is, what are the goals that you actually have? And are we working towards those goals, or are we working to some other arbitrary goal that somebody else has set for you? Because for you, you're the only person who can know if that's the actual goal that you want or that you have. So I want to talk a little bit about this now in terms of kind of the business side of things. I've gotten a couple questions and comments in the Facebook group just to kind of talk a little bit more about the business side and how we think about things. And this is kind of coming from two questions. One is a comment that we had in the Facebook group asking me to tell a little bit more about the kind of origin story of the business. And one was a comment of a colleague of mine who he's been a very successful coach. He used to work for another big coaching company that went out on his own and kind of recently hired somebody to kind of start the steps to kind of scale the business. Hire one coach, get more clients, hire another coach, eventually have, 10, 15, 20 coaches working for you. But he kind of found after he hired this first person that it just that wasn't congruent with what he actually wanted, that he was just scaling for the sake of scaling, and it wasn't aligned with what he actually cared about and what his actual long-term goals were. And so I think there's this idea, and I think this has really been fueled by probably the last, let's call it 30 years of business, but really focused on in the last probably, I want to say probably 10 years, 15 years, kind of this post 2008 era with free money. And it was dominated by these business models that kind of had a couple things in common. One is profitability was achieved at scale. So you weren't profitable until you had 1 billion people, which having 1 billion users or customers or clients is just one of the craziest things I can imagine. Like having that as your end goal. Two is the value of your company and your ability to sustain who you were and like actually stay alive and in business was dependent on scaling, which is just adding more and more users so you could raise a round of money to keep your business running. And that was kind of how the business world worked. Everything was, can we use software and technology to scale whatever it is? And so that became the answer. Every meeting I've ever been in, and I've been in meetings with private equity firms, venture capitalists, I've been in meetings with industry leaders. I've been in so many different types of business meetings. And the theme of all of them, and the more I think about it, the more it's just kind of something that I keep coming back to is the theme is always, how do you get to scale? That's the discussion that happens all the time. It's never, how do you make your product so good that your clients never leave? It's always, what is your customer acquisition cost? What is your churn? And what is it going to cost me as an investor to get your business to 100,000 clients, right? And that's the discussion. Are you a platform? Can you scale? And so while that's the answer in some cases, I just want to make sure that people realize that's, if you're a business owner, especially let's talk about like service-based businesses, scale isn't the only road to success. And I want to talk about some of the roadblocks, pitfalls, just things that you run into as you scale a business. The number one thing that if you're running kind of a lifestyle business, you're running a small business and your goal is not to build a unicorn company, the thing that you have to understand is as you go through levels of scale, oftentimes early in the process of scaling, your profit drops. And this has happened to us at Macros Inc. Basically, every kind of step function along the way is we have to decrease our profits to try to drive the next level of growth. Because what happens is early on when it's just 2 people running the business and like 3 people doing coaching, you know, you're doing all of the marketing, all of the admin, all of the B2B, all the sales, all the ops. You're doing everything, right? And then you get so busy you have to hire somebody, but maybe you're not making that person's entire salary up yet, right? You're hiring them because hopefully they can take over your marketing role and they can be more efficient. But you have to pay for that. So now instead of you making 20 grand a month of profit, you get a split between the 2 owners. You're making $12,000 a month of profit because you have to pay a good marketing person, you know, after taxes and everything, it's 100 grand a year, right? Okay. Well, now you and the owner, or you and the other owner, maybe it's 3 owners or whatever, maybe it's just you. Now you're taking home $12,000 a month of profit instead of 20, right? Now the next level of scale is I have to hire, you know, an admin person and a project manager and a marketing assistant, and I have to pay somebody to manage ad spend, so I have to pay a media buyer. Okay, well now my profit that I just eked and clawed up to $30,000 a month is now I had to hire 3 people. Now I'm back down to 12. So you kind of keep playing this game of your profits drop at each level of scale. Now that doesn't always happen. Sometimes your growth can outpace it. But that's something you have to prepare for. So if you've built a business where it's a lifestyle business, it's just you're doing everything, you're making, you know, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, and you want to scale, you really want to take that step in the right direction, you're probably going to have to take a pay cut to do that. Now that for you, if you want to scale, that's the path there. But if you don't want to do that, you have to think about that and keep that in mind. The next one is really understanding ego. And this is something that I find personally difficult. And it's because it's kind of the dichotomy of what this means is as you scale a business, your capacity as a human being has to get bigger, right? You have to be able to take on more work. You have to be able to take on more responsibility. You have to be able to take on bigger problems. And so your ego, your self-belief and your confidence in yourself has to grow. You have to be willing and able to do the work to get to where you want to go. And you have to be willing to make bigger gambles, bigger decisions, things with, more on the line. So that requires more ego. On the flip side, you have to have the humility to have very little ego when it comes to having discussions with your leadership. You have to be willing to kind of take ownership and not blame other people. And so you kind of have to balance this internal ego versus external ego of what other people see. And then also you kind of have to, internally keep yourself in check so you're not like, oh, I've become this very important person. And that can be really difficult at times, especially when, if it's you and you have a team of directors or whoever who's working with you. There's times where you have the right decision and you really feel like you need to kind of hammer this home. And you have to find out of, am I willing to do that and alienate my directors? Or is it like, is this something that like I need to take a step back because although I think I have the right decision, maybe they're correct. And there's always just this kind of dance of like ego good, ego bad. And that's something that can be very difficult to manage and kind of thread the needle on. The other problem that occurs at scale is, to keep this as PG as possible, stuff rolls uphill, right? When you are managing a team of 100 people, there's layers of things being filtered, and only the really bad stuff rises to the top. And so you actually end up spending more of your day dealing with really difficult problems than you do doing like fun work, projects, things like that. And so you have to decide, like, do I really like working with clients? Do I really like providing my service? Do I really like managing the business operations? Do I really like doing marketing? Do I really like doing sales? Do I want to keep doing those things? Or do I just want all the bad problems to come to me and I just spend all day dealing with 10 different department heads, like problems that they can't solve coming to me? And so I think those are the things that people don't always think about. The other thing that you really have to think through if you're trying to scale a business is, with each level of scale comes a much bigger level of liability, right? Is when you have just you're just thinking about your own paycheck. When you have another person, you're thinking about your paycheck and their paycheck. When you have 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, the liability of lives that you have really grows exponentially, and there's a level of stress and just discomfort that comes waking up every day knowing that the decisions you make and the amount of effort you put in that day affects somebody's livelihood, maybe 50 people, maybe 100 people, maybe 150 people, maybe 1,000 people, maybe 10,000 people, whatever level of scale you want to get to. Every day, your effort and the decisions you make directly affect that, whether it's today, next month, next year, whatever. And so you really have to weigh a lot of those things and decide, is scale really the answer? And so to tie that back to kind of the health and fitness aspect of this is really decide what you want and what you're willing to deal with to get that result. And you have to make sure they're congruent. So that's the episode today. I hope this was helpful and just a little bit of an insight, just making sure that you understand what it is that you want and you make the decisions and you align your life in such a way that you actually are making steps towards where you want to be and not where you think you should be based on what other people have told you. So that's it. I'm Dr. Brad. I'm out of here. Make sure you guys press the subscribe button and press the alert bell. Whatever graphic side it pops up. I will see you guys later. I'm out of here.